Call the meeting to order. Dear God, today as we start this session, opens, we pray for your presence will be before us and for everyone to serve in the decision-making and process of our city. We pray for your direction, which will lead us to be a city of strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day and wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing and all those who work to transform our city, to make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
Sorry, you already started. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Council Mercier.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
You
Yes.
should say here.
Council Chow.
Yes.
Council Conway.
Here.
Council Drinkwater.
Here.
Council Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Leahy.
Here.
9 present.
Memorials, Consulate Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple moments of silence here I would like to read. First, I would like to request a moment of silence in Docken Chamber for Mrs. May Young Lu of Lowell, who passed away peacefully last Wednesday, December 30th, 2020, surrounded by her loving family. May Young, which means beautiful face, lived a beautiful life in the midst of a chaotic world history. She was born in 1932 and grew up in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, during tumultuous times of economic hardships and the events of World War II. At the age of 20, she moved to Battambang province, where she started and operated a successful business. As a woman business owner that was unique during the times, she was fluent in Khmer, Chinese, and Vietnamese. Her independent thinking and strong will have made a big difference in her family's survival. When the Khmer Rouge regime took over Cambodia, Mrs. Lu and her family were targeted and severely mistreated. Mrs. Lu was imprisoned a couple of times and was ordered to be executed. But by the grace of God, the orders weren't followed. She was able to escape the killing fields with her family and brought them to Massachusetts in 1981. As a single mother in the U.S., Mrs. Lu remained strong, resilient, and resourceful. She worked many jobs to keep her children fed, clothed, and sheltered. Even in a new country, she remained true to her goals and philosophy. She wanted to be independent and raise her children to be successful. She put all 5 of her children through colleges. In Lowell, Mrs. Lu was active with the Glory Buddhist Temple. She enjoyed cooking and loved spending time with her family, especially her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She is survived by her 5 children and their spouses, Chey Prum and Ratana Kung of Lowell, Tun Prum and Susan Sum of Dragett, Kunti and Sophia Prum of Lowell, Kontia and Sokan Prum of Malden, and Mylan and Vijayaravot Grad of Dragett, and 13 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, and many nieces and nephews. On a personal note, she was my mother's best friend. Her nickname was Mama, which signifies a highly respected independent woman, business owner, and a matriarch. I also have another moment of silence, Mr. Mayor. A dear friend of the family, Nancy Judge, and I would like to request a moment of silence in Docken Chamber for Mr. Ray Michel. Ray Michel of Lowell passed away peacefully at home on December 24, 2020, surrounded by his loving family. Born in Lowell on November 13, 1941, Ray was the son of the late Joseph and Teresa Luzo Michel. He was a devoted husband of 57 years to Trudy Val Michelle. He is survived by his children, Lisa Rage and her husband Paul of Milton, Lynn Wise and her husband Don of Swampscott, and Lori Michelle Galvin of Lowell. Ray was a devoted and proud Pepe to Jack Galvin, Donnie Wise, Elizabeth Wise, Ethan Wise, and Aaron Jonkers. Although he claimed he was not a dog person, he gained comfort in his final years from his 3 dogs, Rex, Bo, and Girl. The oldest of 5 sons, Ray is survived by his brothers and their wives, Richard A. Michelle of Dragut, Sergeant Major, retired U.S. Marine Corps, Donald and Elaine Michelle of Hudson, North Carolina, David and Mary Michelle of Huntersville, North Carolina, and Dennis and Ronnie Michelle of Salisbury, Massachusetts. Also, his in-laws, Rachel Duchamp of Westford, Chuck Vale of Chakotay, Illinois, John and Lou Vale and Joe Vale of Lowell, Barbara Pierce of Ormond Beach, Florida, and his aunt and uncle Juliet and Roger the Rochers of Lowell. Ray had many loving cousins, nieces, and nephews. He was preceded by in-laws Raymond and Gertrude Savat Vale, sisters-in-law Florida Vale Collin, Teresa Muldoon Vale, and Betty Donnelly Michelle, and brothers-in-law Raymond Vale Jr. and Roger Duchamp. Ray was a graduate of St. John Dog School and Lowell High School, class of 1959. He was signed by the LA Dodgers upon graduation, playing for 3 years until he didn't know where my fastball was going. He joined Digital Equipment Corporation as a stock boy following his release from baseball. He rose through the ranks, becoming European distribution manager in Geneva, Switzerland, and retired after 40 years as corporate manager of logistics for Hewlett-Packard. In his spare time, Ray coached the Lowell Kingsborough American Legion baseball teams for 9 years with the help of Butch Hamilton and Joe Barrows. He was proud of how his former players grew to be good men and good citizens. Ray also loved the golf. As a member of Mount Pleasant, he became one of the Tuesday regulars. Whenever he would come home after a round and was asked how he did, his response was, "I stunk up the place." Ray could be found volunteering behind the scenes of various Lowell High School organizations, such as the Lowell High School Hall of Fame and the Lowell High School Distinguished Alumni. He was also the first chairman of the Friends of Lowell High School Baseball Committee. In addition to volunteering, Ray was generous supporters of many charitable organizations, including the Salvation Army, Shriners Hospital, St. Jude Hospital, and the Owl Diner charities. Ray's legacy to you is this: enjoy life, have fun, keep your sense of humor, take things in stride, and let those you love feel it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to extend my sympathy to the Michelle family and also say that I'm very, very sorry. The family called me personally to do this memorial, but that's fine. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in Darkened Chamber for Omar Jay Page, a longtime resident of the Pawtucketville section of the city. He was the beloved husband of Pauline Page, with whom he was married for 66 years. Born in Lowell, Omar was educated in the Lowell schools and following high school enlisted in the United States Navy, serving during the Korean War. He served the city of Lowell for many years as a police officer from 1959 until 1968, and following with the Lowell Fire Department, retiring in 1981 as a lieutenant. He was a communicant of St. Rita's Church. Omar was a true family man. He made everyone in his family feel special. In addition to his wife, Pauline, he leaves 2 daughters, Diane and Paula, 3 sons, James, Kenneth, and Douglas, 2 brothers, George Page and Robert Page, and his wife, Anne Marie Page, all of Lowell, 12 grandchildren, and He was the brother of the late Madeline Page. Also, I'd like to offer a moment of silence in dock and chamber to all those loved ones who have passed away since our last city council meeting. They all will be truly missed. May they rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in dock and chambers for Joanne Quinkel Georges. Joanne Quinkel Georges, 70, passed away peacefully at her home in Plum Island, Newburyport, December 28, 2020, surrounded by a loving family. Born in Ludlow and raised in Indian Orchard, Mass. She was the daughter of the late Mitchell and Ann Labuda. She was a graduate of Cathedral High School in Springfield and obtained a bachelor's degree from Boston University. Joanne had a corporate career with Budget Rent-A-Car managing operations at Logan Airport, moved on to national management. Later in life, she worked as a corporate consultant. She had a passion for the water and loved spending time boating and sailing with her husband, Paul Georges. Joanne enjoyed gardening, reading, and taking long walks with her dog, Gracie. Her favorite thing was spending time with her grandchildren, whom she absolutely adored. Joanne is survived by her husband, Paul Georges of Newburyport, her children, Ross Quinkel, Christy Reed, and Kerry Quinkel, grandchildren, Penelope and Sebastian Quinkel, brothers Chuck Labuda and Dan Labuda. Funeral services at this time was private, and a celebration of a life will be announced at a later date. May Joanne's soul rest in peace. I'd also like to offer a moment of silence in dock and chambers for Joseph Wood. Joseph Wood, 91, longtime resident of Lowell and most recently of Dracut, passed away on Friday, January 1st, 2021 at his home with his loving family by his side after a courageous battle with cancer. Born in Lowell, Mass. On October 1st, 1929, Joe was the son of the late Samuel and Mary Cummings Wood. Joe served with the rank of lieutenant in the United States Army, Judge's Advocate General Corps, was stationed in England and Ireland during the Korean War, and was honorably discharged. He was a graduate of St. Michael's School, Keith Academy, Boston College, and Suffolk Law School. After graduation from law school, he practiced law with his brother, Al Wood. Later, he worked in Boston for the firm of Paul Smith. Joe finished his career as a guidance counselor, first at the Middlesex County Training School, then at Lowell High School, doing what he loved the most. Joe's devotion to his family was outstanding. He was a mentor and role model to his many nieces and nephews, as well as grandnieces and grandnephews. Joe was an avid sports enthusiast and quite an athlete himself. Though he usually bragged about the talents of others, he loved all the Boston teams, particularly the Red Sox. But he often insisted the manager be fired if he felt the season wasn't going well. Joe was one of the original Wood brothers from Wood Brothers Florists. He worked there when the shop first opened while at BC and Suffolk, and continued to be involved with through the many generations, helping to oversee the continued growth and success of his family's business. Joe spent many a Saturday morning at the shop greeting and reminiscing with customers and friends. He's survived by his sister Peggy Wood Mahoney of Lowell, a brother William Wood, MD of Palm Beach, Florida, his many nieces and nephews, grandnieces and grandnephews. He was predeceased by his siblings, Mary, James, John, Albert, and Eugene, and his goddaughter, Jane Frances Mahoney Killick. The family would like to especially thank the staff of Lowell General Hospital Cancer Center for their exceptional care over the past year. Joe will be missed by his family, his many friends, and his colleagues. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'd just like to offer a moment of silence for Dorothea Danis, 82 of Lowell. She passed away peacefully Monday, December 28, 2020, at her home, surrounded by her loving family. She was the beloved wife of Peter J. Danis, her husband for 61 years, who survives her. Born in Lowell, August 18, 1938, daughter of the late John C. and the late Paraxi Devils Alexuva. She attended Lowell schools and was a graduate of Lowell High School, class of 1955. Dottie went on to graduate from Lowell State Teachers College. In addition to being a proud homemaker for her children, she also assisted her husband for over 50 years in the family business, well known as Dana's Fruit and Confectionery Store in Lowell. Dottie was also a member of the Hellenic Orthodox Holy Trinity and Greek Orthodox churches. She is the grandmother of Johanna Danis, who was a intern in the mayor's office. May they all rest in peace. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Mayor's business, communication for remote and Zoom participation. Need a motion to accept and place on file by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Chow. Need a motion to accept and place on file minutes of the Environmental and Flood Issues Subcommittee, December 22nd, and City Council regular meeting, December 22nd. Motion by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Mercier. Go right into, being after 7 o'clock, we'll go right into the general public hearings. 5-1, loan order, accelerated repair project. Open up the meeting to all those in favor. Anyone in favor? Do we have anybody on? No. Okay. All those in favor? In favor, hearing none, that portion is closed. Open up to anybody in opposition. Opposition. Opposition, that portion is closed. Need a motion to refer to the clerk's office for 20 days by, motion to adopt and refer to the clerk's office for 20 days by Councilor Drinkwater, seconded by Councilor Conway. We need a roll call, right? Roll call.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Chow.
Yes.
Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Drinkwater.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay. Back to 4, unfinished business. Need a motion to remove from the table by Councilor Mercier, second by Councilor Drinkwater. Okay. So we need a motion. So we have a motion to remove from the table.
Get a roll call on that, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
so I need a roll call for that. Roll call.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Why are we removing this from the table?
We're going to have a discussion, then we have Billy Joe Turner to explain any bills,
Council-
any
It just, the motion is not debatable, it's a motion to remove from the table. If it fails, it doesn't get brought up. If it carries, then the item can be brought up.
Does it mean that we're not supporting it, we're not voting on it?
It doesn't mean anything. It means it gets off the table and you can discuss it.
So that you can discuss it.
Oh, I see, all right.
So point of clarity, we're going to vote to take it off the table for discussion if we want.
Okay,
Roll call.
Council Mercier.
yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Chow.
Yes.
Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Drinkwater.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
No.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
8 yeas. Now you can bring up the underlying item, Mr. Mayor.
So permission to waive the full reading, second reading by title, yep.
Well, it's already been adopted. We already had discussion. Aren't we going right into discussion, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor?
you have to do the second reading, Council.
Ah,
Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, in City Council vote to approve the payment of unpaid invoices from the prior fiscal years for the school department. Do a roll call first.
A motion to adopt, or
So, sure, Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I voted not to take this off the table because this council has not received any information as to why these bad bills were not presented before the end of the fiscal year. Some of these are dated well before the fiscal year. Some of these are duplicate orders. And we've had at least a couple of subcommittee meetings regarding bad bills. And so I didn't support taking it off the table. And in some cases, there were second notices sent by the vendors. So I just don't understand what has changed. And another business manager from the school department was here. I'm not just doing this to make a point, but at some point, everyone else is doing their job. So how can we allow and make sure every other department head is doing something, yet we have what I think is, a consistent pattern of lack of paying attention to detail. Now, I will say I will ask you, Mr. Mayor, I understand there was a motion by a member of the school committee that any bad bills be brought before the school committee prior to sending that. Is that correct? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, there was a motion made to
Ms.
present them to the school committee before they come over for a request for the council.
Okay, can I also ask you, what process is going to be in place so these do not happen again, and that we're paying attention to what the city is encumbering? I mean, people upset with the auditor. The auditor just did her job. End of the year, he closed the books, and then there is some time to get them in. So,
we have a member from the school department here, Billy Joe Turner, that instead of having a written report, she's here tonight to explain and answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. First, Councilor Mercia.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since our last meeting, I have learned that the business in question has been paid, and I'm very grateful for that. I was not going to support it because I didn't see it on the list. I also sense the frustrations from my colleagues about this vote when we were reassured some time ago that this would be the last time we had bad bills coming before us, but I will reluctantly support this vote. I only do so that patient people will receive what they're owed as the business that I have fought for last time. So I understand the frustration, but I understand Billy Joe is here. Anybody that has any questions can ask her. I'm going to say this about Billy Joe Turner. I'm sorry that this came before us, but I always respect her. I think she does a tremendous job. How this particular thing got out of this before us, I don't know, but I don't know that we should be blaming her. I think other circumstances have arisen, and I think that she's a credit to the city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we let Ms. Turner go at this time, Mr. Clerk, if you can.
She's in the meeting,
Right.
Mr. Mayor.
Does she come up on
Hello.
the Sure.
Yep, I'm
okay,
here.
there you are. Okay,
Good
thank you.
evening. Good evening. First, I want to say that I totally understand the frustration that you face, because I face it too. I want to let you know that we're bringing these forward to you because of the Mass General Law 44, Section 64, that states we have to bring it in front of you, even though we have the funds to pay it. We had enough money at year end. There was $157,000 that would have covered these bills, so we did not overspend our budget. The amount that was left at the year end would have covered the bills had the bills come in on time. I also want to stress that we're not asking the city to appropriate funds. We do have the funds, and the cost or the bills that are coming in now do fall under the appropriations that we did budget for this year. So the emphasis is that we're not in excess of our last year's budget. We did not overspend. It's merely a timing issue. I also want to emphasize that I promised that we would not let all of the, the things that happened last year. When there were issues with employees, we addressed it and we made sure we corrected those processes that were, or we implemented processes that were slacking or lacking. But unfortunately, I have a few examples that I would like to share so that you can understand we're on the same page with you. Delayed bills don't necessarily mean that we're lacking fiscal controls. There's some examples that the school department faces that other departments may not face. For instance, if a child is placed by DCF, or if a child is homeless and they're placed into a residential program, that child may not even belong to us. One example of a bill that just came in after the bills that you have, so more bills have come in. But after you've received that list, a bill came in, and here's the example. The child didn't even attend our school district. The child attended a surrounding town district, and I can share this stuff with you. I have a paper trail on all of this. That child went to that school district, but when they determined that the father was a resident of Lowell, now we're responsible to pay that. The solicitor is aware of these laws and is working with me, because there are times that we will get bills that there are no purchase orders, there are no contracts, but she helps to expedite those once we do identify a student like that. Another example that I can share with you, just so you can see the dilemma that we face, is after we discussed this with you last year, we implemented systems to improve the productivity of our staff members so that they would do quarterly purchase order review reports rather than annually. But even when we call those vendors asking for invoices, we have documentation showing that there are some that said, we don't have any outstanding bills. Due to COVID, we didn't do the work. Then months later, they're submitting a bill. We're not going to just pay that blindly without them proving to us that they did the work. Another example is a vendor that we have a paper trail showing that we said, do not reach out to, it was a special ed student, and the IEP dictated certain services and the parents were not happy with those, so they were asking for an independent evaluation. When the company was identified, we, from our office, sent emails saying, do not do work for this child until we get the contract from the city. They still did the work. So we're on the same page as you. We believe some of them should not be paid because they're going against our rules. But unfortunately, we bring them to you so that you have the right to know what's going on. We're trying to be transparent. And we also want to give you the right to make that decision, being that we could possibly have a lawsuit. Another example of a bill that we're facing is one.
I don't want to interrupt, Ms. Turner, but.
Okay. All right. All right. So I'm just letting you know that there are many examples that I can share with you that are nuances of the school department.
Sure. Just 1 second. Sorry to interrupt, Madam Manager.
Thank you. Just for clarification, I think it would be smoother, and we've had this conversation, if there is such an explanation to come over with the bill, so we know, so the council knows that.
Exactly.
So in the future, I think that would be helpful. I did want to just say to the council that we do know that the bills that are before us, the goods or services have been delivered, and so the vendors are entitled to payment, albeit they're late. So there's a likelihood that they would sue and would be responsible because there's an affidavit saying that the goods and services. But I understand there could be a million reasons, but that's what I think the council's looking for. Is if there are these extenuating circumstances, if that explanation comes over, then it's something the council can consider. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just to
Mr. Mayor, I think we don't need to hear an excuse for every single bill, right?
Right.
We'll be here all night. So, I mean, if that's going to be the case where, we'll get the excuses before instead of after, I think that may make a bit of difference. But, taking what the manager said, I mean, if the council wants to hear every single excuse, then that's fine. But, I think I got an explanation from the manager.
Right, we'll get an explanation next time in writing. Councilor Conway, did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last year when we came up with this situation, we did talk about, and I made I believe a motion that was supported by the council that we would meet on a regular basis, the business department from the school department and also from the city, so that we wouldn't run into that issue. I would suggest that we continue to meet, and I believe it's my understanding that on a monthly basis, the school department is meeting, or the city is meeting with the school department, and I would like to make a motion that Connor Baldwin at these, it's my understanding he's at these meetings, if he could at these on these monthly meetings, if he could give a very brief update to the city council on how what is actually going on, and that so that we don't run into this problem again, and that we can fix it right away, whatever that problem might be. So that I'd like to make a motion for that, so that again, Connor Baldwin could come up with a brief report on each one of those monthly meetings to the city council.
Is there a second to the motion? Councilor Mercia, a second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any specific questions for the?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Thank you, Billy Joe, for the updated information. I concur with the manager. It would be helpful to provide that information to us, and I understand sometimes explaining it is easily, and I do. I spoke to the CFO this afternoon about these bad bills, and in particular the out-of-state district of those costs for children who are homeless, and that it's a heartbreaking situation. And I understand DCF, something like that. I understand. However, when we're getting bad bills that aren't processed for Oriental trading, and school specialty supplies, musical equipment. I mean, we are the gatekeepers. The buck stops here with the council, and I just don't want to continue to have to process bad bills. That doesn't send a good message to the taxpayers who have to pay their bills, and we're not being fiscally responsible, and that's clearly something we all pride ourselves on. So I do understand there will be extenuating circumstances beyond our control. However, most of these are within our control. So, then the other side of me says I can vote against it. Then we start getting claims against the city. So I don't want to put this. I don't want to jeopardize the city. There's money to pay for it. Let's hope this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion to pay the bad bills.
Motion by Councilor Rourke. Second by Councilor Noon. Roll call.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Noon.
Yes.
Councilor Rourke.
Yes.
Councilor Samaras.
Yes.
Councilor Chow.
Yes.
Councilor Conway.
Yes.
Councilor Drinkwater.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay. Communications from the city manager. Thank you, Ms. Turner. Communication from the city manager.
Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
can I just have a request? Ms. Turner, could you kindly forward that report, and we will have another, we'll call a meeting to talk about.
She's not there.
She's gone.
I'm here.
Oh, she is.
Yeah, you had some examples for us, so if you could, but we'll call a finance subcommittee meeting. We were going to anyway to discuss those and the measures that you put in place.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rourke.
Mr. Mayor, before we get into the communications, if I may just ask for a quick suspension of the rules for a timely matter that I'm hoping that the city can be helpful for.
Sure, motion by Councilor
Second.
Rourke, second by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Rourke.
Thank you. So recently, the Merrimack Valley Conference has banned parents, spectators from hockey games, basketball games, for the athletic teams to be played, boys and girls and so forth. I've gotten a couple of calls from parents asking if it was a school decision, a city decision, or a conference decision, I know that those same parents had contacted, I believe, Councilor Samaras because he was the headmaster and so forth. So it was a conference decision. So the city has no no say in it or whatnot. But what I believe hopefully the city can do is maybe utilize LTC to put the games on the local cable networks. I know that Council Samaras has had some dealings with this in the past as headmaster. Maybe he can speak to it, but I'm hoping that we can at least get the games on local TV. I understand that they are being streamed, maybe, so that may be something where LTC could help out. But I would just like to bring that up and just see if there's something the city could do for parents and spectators that would like to see their kids play, especially the seniors. I know that the opening night for basketball was tonight. I believe hockey is either tomorrow or Thursday. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to LTC then and see what we can do, Madam Manager.
Mr. Mayor.
Sure, Councilor Samaras.
I just want to support Councilor Rourke. He's correct in all of this. And I think every one of us do realize that because of this pandemic, a lot of our children, not only are they suffering academically, but they're suffering socially. I mean, there's sports programs, the ability to meet with each other, but to have games and not even be allowed to have their parents there or present. And I think we owe it to them to ensure that, their future is taken care of. Because the thing is, these videos not only support the parents in supporting their children, but it also plays well for them in their application to colleges, especially if they're looking for an athletic scholarship. So I want to commend Councilor Rourke for bringing this up, at this point. But I also would like to ask for suspension of the rules for another timely issue, if possible.
We got to finish this first, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, Councilor Elliott.
Yep. This is an excellent motion. The city gets an awful lot of money for telecommunication, and now's the time to be able to broadcast this for parents who can't go and support. So this is a very good idea. I'm wondering, can the high school, does a television production studio, or they must have means to do this. So let's hope it can happen.
Sure, Madam Manager.
Yeah, we'll reach out to LTC and to the school department to see about Channel 22, whatever their capability is, as well as
right.
What's the schedule of games, which teams are playing. And
at least the home games, right?
Yeah, and if there is some streaming service, is there a way, if it's already being streamed, can LTC then broadcast? We'll try and track it down.
Thank you. Councilor Samaras?
Yes, I'm asking for support to be able to suspend the rules for another timely requirement.
Second.
Sure, we're still on this. Yeah, okay. Councilor Nunes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, the reason, because we're not going to have a meeting next week, but this is in regard to our first responders, the police and fire, are receiving their vaccine shots. But I've learned that the clerks that work in the police station, fire station, are not eligible for those shots. And these are people who are working with the people who are in harm's way. And I know we have to abide by whatever has been issued by the state or the governor as to who has first access to these vaccines. But I'd like to ask the city manager if she could look into this matter, because what we're talking about is police and fire receiving the vaccines, which they really need because they are the first responders. But the thing is, we also have people who are working in those stations with the first responders. And I think it's important that they get the support because this virus is still with us. It's still at its peak, and we have to do everything we can to ensure the safety of everyone. But I just think it's a group that just was not thought of. But I think they really do qualify to receive some type of support. So thank you,
Okay, thank you.
Madam Manager.
Yeah.
For this. deal with this issue at this time.
Sure. Madam Manager?
Yeah, this is dictated by the state very specifically as to who's eligible and when. I know there was a call with the chiefs, all chiefs in DPH, and that's when certain categories were added, not all. If they are not public facing, they're not in this first round. We'll certainly follow up. The COVID Command Center, the vaccine wing of it meets twice a week. They met late today, they'll meet again Thursday. Their purpose is to look at and take up issues, and there are a number of groups asking to be added. So we will certainly follow up with our chiefs, but I do know that they went to bat and got more people added than had initially been thought of.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
While we're under this suspension, how is the rollout? I did see that the police and fire are whatever phase one level, whatever.
Yeah.
What is the next, and what is the timeline? Do we know, or is
Just
that
take up the last two motions then?
Yeah, we would have to get, it's changing. But next, so the first was medical, hospitals and those folks were the first ones.
Doctors, nurses, hospitals.
First responders. I believe
were seniors in that first one, Madam Manager?
No.
No.
And I think the next group, there may be EMS. They weren't in the first wave.
Okay.
That was something I was talking to the health department about today. There's congregate shelters, and then there are senior housing and so forth. So there's a whole tier system as we're moving
Is that something on the state website, or?
It is.
It is, okay. All right. I'll go look. Thank you.
And so there's 3 phases. And as I said, it's getting tweaked. Some people are being put in.
Understand.
It's solely run by the state. And so the state allocates the vaccines for each group as they come up on the schedule.
Applies to every city and town across
Every
the
city
Commonwealth.
and town, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Back to the agenda, motion response. HR audit, Councilor Elliott, any questions?
No, Madam Manager, you wanted to go over it, or?
Sure, Madam Manager.
Yeah, I just wanted to, so the report explains that following, as the council knows, we went out for a bid in the summer. It came back in the fall higher than we could afford. We did restructure the bid. This is to look at HR and particularly with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. We did then get a successful bidder after looking at all of those, and we have begun the process of contracting with Bloom Shapiro for this phase. I'm happy to report to the council. Part of one of the original motions was not just to identify, what the cost would be for such an audit, but also were there any available funds. I was contacted today by the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, who has indicated that they will be contributing $30,000 toward this effort, and they may contribute more. They are. I think it's a testament to the commitment of the Greater Lowell Community Foundation and other funders who are very willing to work in partnership and in support of this initiative. So that's hot off the press, but I think it's a very good news story. We don't get many good news stories in this pandemic, but it's very nice to be able to share that information tonight. So we have them going under contract, and as I said, in the meetings to come, we'll bring forward the appropriate vote and for gift and the like to be accepted by the council.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. So my follow-up would be the low bid, or the bid was 55,000, so is this 30, does this 30 reduce that liability? Was that,
That's the expectation. I mean,
So,
we had a transfer, but
that's good news, and
We
thank
will
you to the
get- we
Greater
will
Lowell.
get-
Thank
we'll get the
you to
vote
the
in front of the
Community
council.
Foundation for their generosity. I know that this was coming out of the contingency fund, which is there for a reason, contingency, but we thought this was important, and it is. So I think the scope and the process, and we're going to entail the first comprehensive review of the practices, and I think this is a positive thing. So,
And I want
That's
to
good news.
particularly give thanks to Jay Linehan, the executive director there, because he has actively tried to raise money for this purpose, and I thank him personally for doing that. And as I said, it's a support that we're lucky to have here in the city from funders and those such as the foundation. And we look, and this isn't the first time they've stepped up to the plate. The Community Foundation was a great partner in the homeless initiative and sustainable housing, and supported that initiative as well. So,
Thank you. Councilor Drinkwater and then Councilor Noon. And just to remind you, if you're at home, please mute until you speak. There's some noise coming through. Thank you. Councilor Drinkwater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is great news to see this audit moving forward, and even better with the delivery of that great news about the Greater Lowell Community Foundation stepping in to assist with the funding. It's outstanding. I think it's a testament to the fact that, as a city has really demonstrated a commitment to dedicating the funds to make sure this audit happens. Outside organizations that are also committed to this work, they see that and they want to help. And I'm hoping that though the scope of the HR audit was reduced a little bit from the first bid to the second bid, I think it's still very comprehensive. There may be certain follow-up that's needed, or other phases that could be added, and I'm hoping that we can continue to look into and reach out to other possible funders to see if there are ways to fund future phases of this work. But overall, I think it's outstanding news to see this moving forward. I know a lot of this work, it's complex to make progress. It has to be very, very intentional, and it's really outstanding to see the city committed to making those intentional steps. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Noon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thanks Jay Linehan from the Greater Lowell Foundation for being a great partner to the city, and thanks, Madam Manager. I know that you have provided a very detailed report, Madam Managers, for the audience at home. Could you please speak to a little bit about the multiple phase of this audit and how long it takes? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
thank you. As I had indicated previously, we expect this to be a multi-phase audit, in that it will take place going forward over the course of the next 3 or 4 months. It will entail a comprehensive review of the city's hiring practices, including outreach and recruitment efforts, with the intention of developing recommendations to modernize our current process, and also to attract qualified and diverse applicants. The second phase will assess our current diversity, equity, and inclusion activities, and identify operations for improved policies and practices. And then the firm will develop and deliver training for all city employees based on the findings that will seek to promote understanding and best practices with regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the report, the expectation will culminate with a report from Bloom Shapiro regarding their methodology, data collection, and analysis of findings and recommendations. And this will be provided to the council once it's produced.
Thank you. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a great motion by Councilor Elliott, very timely to follow up on the issues that of great concern to the citizen throughout the whole last year. And I want to commend Madam Manager for responding in a timely manner, and also for finding a auditor that can do the job within the budget. And I'm also very impressed that you're able to partner with Greater Lowell Community Foundation and with Jay Lanahan to get some funding to help pay for this cost. I'm very excited, looking forward to see the report. In the meantime, for us, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Madam Manager, for us just to compare and have a pathway, can we get, if it's available publicly, some sample report that Bloom Shapiro has done for other cities that's similar to Lowell, just for us to read it, and then when we get the actual report for our city, we can have some kind of a comparison, or at least to what to expect anyway?
We can investigate. I'm not sure if other communities have the same scope, but we'll look into that and see if there's something like that available.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other
Mr.
questions?
Mayor?
Sure.
Yeah.
Councilor Conway?
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just very quickly, Mr. Mayor. Again, I think this is great news, and especially, you know, when we're talking about the financial situation that we have, not just this community, but any of the communities, and it's compounded with the COVID situation. You know, once again, we have the Lowell Community Foundation with Jay Lanahan stepping up to the plate and helping out. And again, we've talked about the nonprofits and how incredibly positive and great partnerships that they are. And this is just another example, and we certainly thank this organization. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Next motion. Motion response, online motion dashboard.
Mass hire.
Oh.
Mass hire.
Oh, good. All right. Sorry, mass hire grants. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I want to thank whoever, Shannon Norton and the manager for putting this together. We understand that there were 45 people that took place working under that grant. It seems that the grant has been extended to the end of this year, December 2021, and the funding is only going to help internal staff. They ran out of the line item for the funding for the work experience, so the people that need this money the most are not getting it, and that angers me. Having said that, I say that because I know firsthand what this grant does for people. When you talk about grants and the federal government and the state government, especially the federal, they give grants for people to study the growth of the praying mantis or the habits of people living in cities and stuff, when this grant is the most important of all, because it took the most vulnerable people that were headed to die through drugs. They turned their life around and looked for help to regain their self-esteem. This grant allowed that to happen. It matched them up with places like the Bridge Club, the Youth Build, the Phoenix from the sheriff's office. I see these people firsthand and how they've come from unsure, scared people to feel their worth. And this is what bothers me the most. So their term is up. All right, their term is up, and I will say that they did learn how to be recovery coaches, and perhaps the people that are working can find them a job. I don't know how they're going to continue to do that, but this is my ultimate frustration. It is my understanding that people that worked through the mass hire grant of last year who are now unemployed are not able to collect unemployment. These are the most vulnerable people who this grant helped them regain self-esteem, and now this grant has let them down, or the people that oversaw this grant let them down, all because someone at Mass Hire did not supply the city with the FEIN number. That's the Federal Employee Identification Number, because this was a federal grant. So unemployment could not supply benefits to these people. That's another slap in the face. I am so upset about this. These are the people that they still have to put food on the table for their families. They still have to pay their rent for a place to live and put a roof over their head. The bottom line is, now what are we going to do to correct this problem? Can we even correct this problem? So I want to know, because I'm hearing this from so many people, people that worked for the Phoenix, people that worked for the sheriff, through going out through the co-op and helping people that were once like themselves. So, I mean, I'm disappointed because the people that need the help the most are not going to get it. And not only did they not have any funding to continue their job, they now can't even collect unemployment because someone didn't supply the city with the numbers that the city thought the Mass Hire provided the numbers. One thought the other did something that nobody did. That's not right. This is not what this city should be all about.
Madam Manager?
Yeah, Council, we'll look into that. This is the first time I'm hearing of it, but it sounds to me like we should be able to cure this if it's a question of not having the numbers. So let me see what I can find out. You know,
Thank you.
Shannon Norton, I know, will look into this, but, you know, if it's a question of someone didn't submit it and they are otherwise eligible, then...
Well, the people were told, no, you're not going to collect unemployment.
We'll find out. We'll find out, Counselor, and we'll...
I don't want them, I don't want this to... I don't want this to make them go back to drugs again.
Shannon Norton's on the Zoom, so.
Shannon?
If I can. So I know there was an issue with one of our participants who had entered in the wrong employment, the employer name. We were able to fix it the very next day because I have several staff members that have access to unemployment now and have been working since April on helping people with unemployment get unemployment. And there have been several other participants that have gone through this grant that have received unemployment. So I hope that information has got to that person. I know, you know, like I said, we cleared that up with unemployment, so they will be getting their unemployment. It's just the problem with unemployment right now is that the fraud in unemployment was so extensive. It takes a few weeks for unemployment to verify people getting their unemployment checks. So that's the backlog. As far as the people that are not in the working experience right now, we're going to continue to work with them very intensively to get them into unsubsidized employment. You know, that grant continues. There are staff that are working very hard with these people to get them placed into jobs that they can work. Unfortunately, I mean, it worked. It was a wonderful part of the grant. It's unfortunately just funders don't want to fund that. They want to fund staff, they want to fund, you know, training, they don't want to fund the work experience. It's really difficult to find grants that will pay for that, but we'll continue, and we've been in talks even today with another organization that's willing to fund this program going forward. So we're continuing to look to see how we can keep this going, because we do realize how valuable it is to the providers and most importantly the participants.
Thank you. I know 6 people that are affected by this from all different agencies. I will get a hold of the 6 of them tomorrow and see if they were able to collect unemployment. If they have not, I'm going to send them down to the Career Center.
And Councilor Mary Callery texted me that she's working with some of these people to get their unemployment. So Career Center and HR.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Mercer. Any other questions on this? Thank you, Shannon. Motion response C, online motion dashboard. Councilor Drinkwater, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Madam Manager, for this report and the outcome that was delivered. I had originally filed this motion based on some feedback I had received from residents who are fairly savvy with the city website in terms of looking up information from city council agendas and looking for motion responses, informational reports. And one thing they pointed out to me, and I can attest to this as well is that oftentimes you might be looking for a specific motion response or something like that, and you may remember the date that the motion was filed, but you don't necessarily remember the date that the response came in, and it can be a little bit of a cumbersome process to try to track it down on the website. There is a search tool you can use. It seems to produce imperfect results. So an idea was sort of proposed to me to just create a dashboard on the city website that would essentially list motions with their corresponding motion responses, as well as any other informational reports that are given to the council during a given meeting. At the end of the day, there's a wealth of information that are in these responses that we receive every meeting, and I know the staff puts a lot of work into producing them, and I think anything that can make them more accessible to the public is a good thing, and I think this will do that. Just about making government a little bit more accessible and transparent, and I think that's a good thing, because I can't tell you how many times I get a question from a resident, and I know the answer to it is in a motion response, and ultimately I spend some time tracking that down and get it to them, and they're always appreciative of the information that's in those responses. So I know there was a reference in the response. Right now, essentially what has happened is that if you go to the agenda and minutes page of the City Council website, there's now a link to an Excel spreadsheet that's being backfilled with information, has motions in their corresponding response. I think the original idea was to possibly have this live on a web page on the city website. It sounds like that might be kind of an ongoing process to get the information from a linked spreadsheet to a page on the website. I think that could be even more help with the ease of access to residents if we can eventually get that there. So hopefully there's some progress on that as well. But I checked on the link, and I found this to be a very helpful way for residents to access information. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Chow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a great motion by Councilor Drinkwater, and thank you, Moran, for the response, very detailed. We live in the digital era. We do quick search on everything, and to have the motions or the subject matter at hand, it's very, very useful. As we know, we have many motions throughout the weeks, the months, and the year, and so many different topics that we discuss. I don't know if Miran is available right now, but if he is, I just have a quick question. Councilor Drinkwater mentioned some of the aspects of search already, but I did play around. I know it's in a working stage right now, but when I try to do the search on the city website for topic matter, for example, something like River Meadowbrook, it doesn't seem to come up. I know it's in the work, but this would be like more suggestions if you can do multi-word search, instead of just by councilor or by the motion itself, because sometimes a resident might be just interested to see if there's a motion that was made on sales tax or food tax or something like that. If you could do like a Google search type of format on the city website, type in 2 or 3 keywords, and it will come up with the motions or several motions and councilors and date and so forth. That would be great.
Thank you. If you want a response, or you're all set?
If he's available to respond, if that's doable, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think he is.
So, Moran, did you just want to comment on that?
Yes, sir. We'll certainly look into that. Thank you for the feedback. That's excellent feedback. And as the website continues to evolve, we'll make sure that we incorporate that into it, sir.
Thank you. Councilor Rook?
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor. So I'm looking at the motion response for Councilor Drinkwater's motion. It has the motion response, the day was filed in the motion, and right underneath it is the response. Is that no longer on the website, or is it still there?
The motion response, that's still on.
And does it go away at tonight's meeting, or is it always still there?
No, but it would be under this agenda right now. Under, Moran, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but right now it would be tonight's agenda.
It's
If I could expand on that, Madam Manager, please.
Yep.
You're absolutely right. It is on the agenda. The agenda will continue to be online. The intent right now is to provide one consolidated place where folks can go online and find motions and their associated responses. So the link on the spreadsheet brings you directly to that motion response that is online. And then as it evolves, we'll tie it into a web page in the future as the counselor initially requested, so that it can be online with additional information.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions on this one? Motion response, School Street between Liberty and Shaw. Councilor Chow, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is easy, straightforward. The request was to do have a traffic slowing or safety place on between Liberty and Shaw Street. And I want to thank Diane Tradd and Craig Thomas for looking into this matter. And it's found that a stop sign, a four-way stop sign in the corner of Shaw Street and School Street would be useful. I really appreciate Madam Manager again for always looking to the best interest of the neighborhood. So the neighbors will appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Response E, domestic violence, sexual assault, aggravated assaults. Councilor Noon, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Chief Richardson, for the report. I am, pleased to know that the pandemic does not increase these, domestic violence or the sexual assault in the city, which is a good sign, and I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Madam Manager, I brought this up today too, that a couple of nonprofits were asking maybe if there's a way we could get some resources out to the community, so we'll work on that, I guess, through our offices, just to get a...
We will work on getting links to where they can access the resources.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
So we'll work on trying to put those resources in a place that are convenient, that people can find and see what is available.
Thank you. Motion response F, state funding for police facility. Councilor Elliott, any questions?
I'm sorry, Mr. Manager. Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
This is a good report, and I appreciate sending the information down. Madam Manager, I know this is a big ask, and I know it's not going to happen overnight. As I spoke to you, I know there's a bond bill money in there. I think we need to bring some options together. I know we talked at the last meeting about having the governor and other officials who we'd be asking for an appropriation to, we're on the police one, right? Yeah, I think we need to put together a plan. And as we talked about, in order to do that is to look at the assessment that was done a number of years ago. And we do have that report, and that has a lot of the specific specifications in it. I'd like to suggest that a work group be put together. I know we did that last term with the fire department before the whole COVID thing, but I do think it's beneficial. I spoke to Representative Golden about this, and I think it'd be important to have a sort of an elected official component, but also the experts, whether that be from the police department, engineering, public works, planning and development, because I think we need to put together a plan before we move forward. I know it'd be nice if there were funding available to do this work, but there isn't. But I do think internally we can come up with a plan before we go to the governor or the lieutenant governor to say, similar to Lawrence. I'm sure they had planned, they had options. How can we fold in the university, who works cooperatively with the training program, the Middlesex Community College. I'd like to suggest that and probably refer to the manager don't want to refer this back, but it is a good report with some information and letters that were sent out. But in order to take the next step forward, I do think we have to bring in some definition, some guidance, some purpose.
Good, Tom.
I don't know if I need to make that in form of a motion, but
No, Madam Mayor.
We can work on putting together a working group.
okay,
Council.
okay, good. Look, I know this is a long-term project, but that police station, public safety building is enough's been
Yes,
said.
thank you. Any other, Council Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just hearing Councilor Elliott speak on this, and I know we don't need a second, but I would support the working group. And he's talking about partnerships, which I think is the only way we're going to get this done. Just through my regular job, I know that the closest two state police barracks, I think one's in Andover and one's in Concord, which is a little over 30 miles apart from each other. Is there a possibility of partnering with the state police to try to get maybe a barracks in the Lowell area? That way we can, maybe, share some of the costs of putting a major police station together or something like that. Just a thought when I heard Councilor Elliott mention about partnerships. Thank you.
Good idea.
Good idea.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Thank you. Informational reports, Madam Manager, 2020 year in review.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the council. I'll modify some of my comments that I made earlier tonight at the earlier special meeting of the council. But as I said at that time, oftentimes at this time of year, we do a presentation of State of the City, but given the pandemic that we're in and given the tremendous and tumultuous year that 2020 was because of COVID-19 pandemic, it seemed prudent to give the council and the residents of Lowell an update as to what was 2020 and take a look back at 2020. We'll certainly talk about State of the City at a time that's more appropriate when we are dealing with the next fiscal budget in FY22, which will be sometime later this spring. But in just opening comments, the public health crisis impacted every aspect of city operations, both functionally and fiscally. And we could never have imagined what we'd be facing a year ago, that what we faced in March and have continued to go through. But despite the crisis and the challenges that we've encountered and worked together through, the city continued to move forward in a positive direction. And again, I want to say at the outset, none of this would have been possible without the incredible hard work and dedication of our employees, our department heads, our staff. None of that would have been possible. I'll talk about COVID and all the things that the city has done, but I do want to focus, at least at the outset, on as a result of the ambitious course that this council set and continued commitment of our city workforce in the administration, we continue to focus on economic development, financial management, public safety, partnerships, and education. So let me just focus quickly on economic development and update the council and the people at home what has transpired. With the goal of promoting a vibrant and sustainable economy, the city maintained an intent focus on economic development over 2020. We saw many long-sought milestones of economic development come to fruition, especially in the Hamilton Canal Innovation District, where the pieces are coming into place to enable and realize its incredible potential. In September of 2020, Streets F and G and the Songus Signature Bridge reached substantial completion, a critical infrastructure that's necessary in order to have development happen in the Hamilton Canal. Wind Development continued its construction on the mixed-use development project on parcels 8 and 9, which is creating 125 units of housing and 5,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. The council authorized in 2020 an LDA with the Lupoli companies for parcels 1 through 5 which is going to be an incredible project in the Hamilton Canal District, including 500 space garage, mixed-use development proposed in over 2 large buildings. The council also continued to support the 900 space Hamilton Canal parking garage, and in December of 2020 was there to cut the ribbon on the $38 million city-funded project. I want to point out that the pandemic did not inhibit these projects, and it's critically important because the pandemic will be over. It will be over, and the city will be ready to hit the ground running on all of the infrastructure that the city has pushed and the council has supported. We saw many continued progress on other infrastructure. The Tiger Bridges has continued. We hit some challenges, but that we worked those through as far as the canal drawdown. And of course, the widening of Route 38, a project that has moved forward notwithstanding the pandemic. As a matter of fact, may have benefited a little bit because of the traffic not being as challenging. In 2020, we broke ground on the Lord Overpass Redesign project, and this is going to be a transformative project. It's not only going to create a new gateway for the city, but enhancing the accessibility for downtown in the Gallagher Terminal. $25 million project is on schedule to be completed in 2023, and the project now is in phase 3 of construction. One of the things we were challenged with during 2020 because of the pandemic is our small businesses and the need to support them because they are vital to our community and they're the cornerstone of our economy. And they have been hit hard by the pandemic. Our Office of Economic Development, led by Christine McCall, provided small business with relief and support that they deserve. We had the first round of funding for small businesses that we launched in May. We gave $5,000 grants to 46 businesses in the city, which employ over 300 people. And of those businesses, 72% were minority-owned and 52% women-owned business. We just opened round 2 of this relief grant program for our small business, and this is a lifeline for them. They can use this money to pay rent, to pay bills when they don't have the income coming in. We will be distributing in the pool. We have $500,000, and businesses will be eligible in $5,000 increments to have that for support, as I mentioned. All of these businesses have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. The Economic Development Office also stood up a marketing grant program, and it helped 20 small businesses put new online strategies because they needed that in order to stay in business. They also stood up the Golden Mask Program, rewards for businesses who are following COVID mitigation measures. And then the other, I think, successful thing that we were able to do through economic development was expand outdoor dining for our businesses, our restaurants, the Streetery program that took 10,000 square feet of public space and made it into outdoor dining. We look forward to continue working with them as the weather gets better. We did purchase heaters for their spaces, and hopefully they can take advantage of that very soon. Quality of life remained a major focus for the city. I want to speak to some of what we've talked about tonight on the agenda, but we know, but the city and the council were compelled by a national and local movement calling for racial justice across all levels of society. We have continued to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and as a result, we've done a number of things in 2020. We increased the frequency and scope of mandatory employee trainings on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The council established an equity and inclusion fund, which will provide funding to advance key initiatives. An insert, in fact, will be included in the fourth quarter tax bill, allowing residents to make voluntary contributions. We selected a consultant to conduct the HR audit that we spoke about earlier, and we expect this to provide great value in our efforts to recruit a talented and diverse workforce. And we've continued to conduct extensive community outreach on available jobs and positions on boards and commissions. The other thing that we have done in connection with city services, we relocated the health department to 107 Merrimack Street, a downtown centrally located space which has state-of-the-art dedicated clinic space. And it couldn't have come at a better time where we need clinic space where public can have access. And the health department is better able to fulfill its mission. We've migrated more city services online. We talked about that earlier tonight, which has been critical during this period where we've had to close the building to the public while the employees are in here working. And I just wanted to share these statistics because they're pretty amazing. Birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, as the clerk is well aware. Those went online in August, and 837 transactions were processed in the month since. Since August, we've had nearly 82,000 bill payments completed online, a major increase over last year. Some of the other public improvements it had to do with outdoor space and outdoor use. We've participated in a number of projects, and that includes the progress made on the extension of the Concord River Greenway. It was a $1.9 million project in partnership with Gateway Cities Parks Program and the National Park. Again, people enjoying the outdoors, being able to walk outside is key and important more important now as we've seen during the pandemic. We also broke ground on phase 2 of the Riverwalk, a $5 million, largely funded by the feds, that's going to extend the trail and create a new trailhead behind the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. And a couple of improvements that I think are important, the parks improvement. Again, quality of life improvement for our residents. Sheehy Park, we put 8 pieces of outdoor fitness equipment there through partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield and Greater Lowell Health Alliance. Hovey Park, which is set to become the city's first fully accessible program through the use of a park grant. And this is for children for it to be fully accessible. I think one of the biggest projects that we were able to complete in a pretty compressed timeline was the Cawley Stadium. Much needed development on the synthetic turf. We were able to install that. The city spent $527,000 in early August, completed it on an aggressive timetable ahead of the athletic season. And this is really important for the safety of Lowell High and other athletes. And it will certainly enhance the facility for many years to come. I want to switch gears for a moment and talk about the financial management because I think this is important for people to be aware. In March, we had the abrupt halt of economic activity, and that resulted in a fiscal fallout taking place in the months since. This really gave us a challenge and posed significant budget implications for the city. We were very fortunate because when the pandemic hit, we entered the pandemic in a very strong financial position that had prepared us for this very unstable period. As of July 1, 2020, we had $12.3 million in the rainy day fund. The FY19 resulted in a $10.1 million undesignated fund balance, and we had $7.46 million in free cash. We maintained a credit rating from Standard & Poor's as very strong fiscal management. This, in a large extent, helped protect us from the havoc of the pandemic because we were in very, very strong fiscal shape. As you know, we had to do 1/12 budgets for 3 months until we could get a better picture of where we stood on a financial footing. We also employed strict controls, fiscal controls in terms of no new hires, making sure that all expenses were monitored, a number of extreme efforts with an eye to avoid layoffs and staff reductions. This has been a challenge, but it has been a priority because one of the last things we wanted to do is have to lay off employees during a pandemic. So as we remain positioned to confront future economic instability, we're going to move forward for the next budget process. I want to credit the financial team, Connor Baldwin, Allison Chambers, for really steadying the ship on the financial matters that have really helped us get through some of the toughest economic times of any community, communities across the country. Some other finance highlights I want to mention. We did a refinance of bonding. We had savings of over $824,000. We deferred GIC payments that the state allowed us to do for retirement assessment, which helped us on cash flow when we badly needed it. We created some new revenue streams through the Community Preservation Act and the Municipal Facility Stabilization Fund using the local option marijuana excise tax. All these initiatives led by the City Council that are going to be very important moving forward. I'm going to speak quickly about public safety because it is critical for all aspects of our life, including economic development, quality of life, you name it. Despite the challenging year for our first responders, and make no mistake, being on the front line of this pandemic was no easy task, and they did it day in and day out. We have seen positive developments in the realm of public safety. We've made progress in achieving goals. Let me speak to the police department. As a result of the department's continued implementation of effective public safety strategies, including community policing, we saw a decrease in crime statistics in 2020 in the areas tracked compared to 2019. 19% decrease in shots fired, 19.7% decrease in burglaries, 28% decrease in car breaks, 34.7% decrease in robberies. The amount of grants and so forth, over 800,000 in federal and state grants were secured by the police department. With the council's support, the department launched a citizen advisory committee this year. And it was begun to serve as a productive channel for public input into public safety decisions. So that's been launched. They've had, I think, 2 meetings, and it will be a really critical piece going forward in community relations. Working around just a couple of other things. We were able to have a safe summer student police academy. And lastly, the department has also started the process of onboarding clinicians, mental health clinicians, to co-respond with officers in mental health related scenarios. And again, we've maintained 250 sworn police officers. The fire department, on the fire side, we were able to purchase 2 fire trucks, fire apparatus valued at $1.2 million, and they're supposed to arrive very soon, we hope. We also maintained the staffing levels of 213 for fire, no layoffs. And following the retirement of Chief Jeff Winward, who did a fabulous job for the city, we appointed Chief Philip Sharon in September. Chief Sharon brings 23 years of experience to the fire department, and he's demonstrated in his first few months a high degree of professionalism and management ability. So we look forward to working with him. I want to just talk quickly about partnerships, because one of the things we found during the pandemic, it was critical that we had partnerships in order to get relief to so many people who badly needed it. And this has been a history throughout the city, including CDBG money and ESG funding. We were able to work to distribute city's distribution with other organizations. We supported 36 organizations and 70 projects. These included senior support programs, food security programs, homelessness, education, youth, and family, and job placement. We had a lot of problems around homelessness in the city before the pandemic. The pandemic exacerbated it tremendously. The city engaged with our local and state providers, and we were able to secure funding to do things like support job training and employment. We stood up the shelter when we needed it at the Stocklosa School so that homeless folks who had no place to quarantine could go and quarantine. The Elliott Church, we supported helping them open a day program, creating safe space for homeless individuals. We supported Life Connection coordinating meal service for more than 150 people a day. And we also worked with them to support other housing for homeless. And most recently, we engaged in intensive coordination with Department of Housing and Community Development to have homeless individuals sheltered at hotels in Chelmsford. We have over 70 people now who will be sheltered there until April. On the education front, the City Council has never wavered in its support of education and our young people. And this is reflected in our contributions to the school department. You know, there's a chart up that shows you our net school spending for several years. And let me just say that our local investment in education dollars exceeds that of other gateway cities. And you can see it clearly from the chart. We also engaged in a landmark effort to leverage funds through the MSBA and the Accelerated Repair Program. Let me just say one of the challenges spoken about in connection with the pandemic has been air quality and HVAC, especially HVAC issues. You know, we were lucky that we were approved for so many projects that we were able to install and get up and going during 2020, despite the pandemic that was going on. We installed new boiler HVAC systems at the Bailey School, the Daly, the Greenhelch, the McAuliffe, the Rogers Stem, and the Sullivan. We also installed new roofs at the Bailey and Sullivan. To say it was a busy summer is an understatement for the construction that has been going on in our schools. This represents $13 million of improvements in our schools, 10 of which we got from the state. We also submitted 21 projects for 14 more schools. Due to the pandemic, the MSBA limited projects that they actually took up in 2020, but they did finally take up some in December, and that's one that we had on the agenda tonight. We were approved for a new project of roof at the Shaughnessy, and we'll continue to aggressively pursue funding for these very much needed repairs and improvements in our schools. But that wasn't all that we did for schools during the year 2020 in the pandemic. DPW's Lands and Buildings Division undertook a monumental effort to prepare our schools for in-person learning under unprecedented conditions. So to date, DPW has spent over 15,000 hours in labor alone, which translates to about over $400,000, readying the schools for students. And through this effort, the city took ventilation fans that previously had been operating at 25% to 99% operational. We spent $52,000 on filters, almost $500,000 on air purifiers for every classroom, and almost $200,000 repairing the HVAC equipment through the efforts of on the roofs through the efforts of DPW. So This has been an all hands on deck, both in the hours spent and the money spent, focusing on our schools. The high school project, as we know, has made significant steps in 2020. Again, none of these projects were stalled, none of them were delayed, and the MSBA, the School Building Committee, approved the final submission to the MSBA. The project has started, as you know, across the street. I'm happy to say early bids for the steel and concrete for Phase 1 came in under budget. So we look forward to that project. I want to just quickly talk about the pandemic COVID-19 response. You know, through the end of 2020, we had over 10,000 cases of COVID in Lowell. 226 people lost their lives. Prioritizing the public health of the Lowell community has been essential to the city and to city's functions. We set up an executive policy group with my office, Office of Emergency Management, the Health Department, the Police Department, the Fire Department. We meet regularly to review what's happening in the pandemic area. Our health department has been under siege, but they have done an amazing job. They set up in the early days of March and later contact tracing, coordinating with local, state, and federal entities, working with Lowell Community Health Center, working with Lowell General, Department of Public Health, and the CDC. Testing, as you know, this is a major priority for the city. In December, when we had no stop the spread sites here, the city launched 2 test sites by partnering with Trinity, EMS, and Cataldo. We tested nearly 10,000 Lowell residents during the month of December alone. We had stop the spread sites earlier in the year, where we worked with Community Health Center, Trinity, CMAA, CBA, the African Community Center, and Farley White to offer free testings, moving the sites around each week. Early in the pandemic, we partnered with CVS Health and the Commonwealth to bring the federally funded rapid testing, where about 1,000 people were getting tested a day. We've had to continue assessing the needs of our employees. So we're trying to balance making sure that we're providing services for the community and at the same time being mindful of the safety of our employees. We have done that. We've had to pivot, and again, I want to stress, we have had to close to the public the building, but we've never closed the offices. They have remained open and ready to serve and have done an outstanding job of serving the public. We've been able to afford people the opportunity to work remotely and pivot back into the offices to reduce the number of people here at any one time. We had to do that. We had to invest in technology so that people had the appropriate hardware and software to work remotely. We've invested in facility improvements, plexiglass dividers, air purifiers for all offices. Again, the goal is to make sure our employees are safe. I also want to commend the efforts, especially of Phil Jeffroy in my office, on communication. The ongoing efforts to improve the city's public outreach has been particularly critical. We launched an extensive COVID-specific communication to encourage adherence to public guidelines, promote awareness. And we did this through a number of methods: social media, traditional media, street-level signage, direct mailing to every house, video messages, and billboards throughout the city. We will be providing the council with a report about CARES Act funding. We were awarded $9.8 million in CARES Act funding to help the city through this pandemic. How did we use it? We used it for COVID testing. We used it for school HVAC improvements. We used it for technology to support remote work. We used it to help the elections process and public safety overtime and costs, which there were significant because of COVID. So let me just close with this. There's no doubt that 2020 was a very difficult and devastating year when you consider the pandemic's toll on our city. However, by remaining focused on the priorities that we've highlighted in this presentation, it wasn't entirely defined by the challenges that the city confronted. I want to commend this council for pushing forward the agendas on all levels for the city during, again, which has been one of the most difficult years in history. So as we continue to move Lowell in a positive direction and position the city to confront whatever 2021 may bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Good report. Thank you that we're all able to participate with you and your staff and department heads, and everybody who works for the city has done a great job this year, especially with the COVID-19, but you know, they continue the great work that they do. So any comments or need a motion to accept
So moved.
all the reports by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Mercia? All those in favor say aye. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we take 6.3 and 6.4 together and send thank you letters for their service to both the Council on Aging and the Library Board of Trustees.
Sure. Motion to take 6.3 and 6.4, letter of resignation by Marion Grass for the library and Eric Lamarche for the COA. Motion by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor say aye. Votes.
Oh, it's an order. Are you doing the order, 60-day various orders?
Yeah, I got the votes first, 7-1 to 7-8, and then the orders.
All right, so
8-1.
if I could, are we on 7-2?
We're on 7-1, so
Okay.
do you want to make a motion to bundle them? Or?
Yes, I'd like to bundle the 7 votes.
Okay.
They're all accept and expend votes for different grants.
Yeah.
I think it's all the same if we
Okay,
could take
motion
that
to
all
bundle
together.
all the votes by Councilor Mercer, seconded by Councilor Drinkwater. There's a water there for you too, Madam Manager, if you want. I knew there was a long report. Yeah, it's a good-looking guy on the cup. 7-1, vote to accept by donation easement in furtherance of New Hall Street Bridge over River, Meadowbrook Rehab. 7-2, vote to accept and expend $15,000 JAG FY 2021 grant. Vote to accept. 7-3, vote to accept and expend FY 21 municipal staffing grant, LPD. 7-4, vote to accept and expend 21 Shannon Community Safety Initiative. 7-5, vote to expend EOPSS 2021 Municipal Road Safety Grant 9, MOS LPD. 7-6, vote to accept and expend FY 21 Municipal Staffing LFD. 7-7, vote to accept and expend State 911 Department F21 Support and Incentive Grant. And 7-8, vote to accept and expend State 911 Department F21 Training Grant. Need a motion to adopt by Councilor Mercier, second by Councilor Elliott. Roll call.
Just on the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councilor Elliott.
I know we're taking this all together, but this is all funding that is coming into the city based upon grant applications, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars for staffing the police department, the Shannon grants that support so many local organizations in here to provide opportunities for the youth. So and to address gang violence throughout the city. So I think this is very important, and just wanted to make note of that.
Thank you. Council Roy?
Yeah, quickly, I would agree with Council Elliott. Some of these, the votes we're taking tonight is really important, and what the funding is going to. I know that almost everything that the police take in through Shannon grants goes right back out into the community to form partnerships. Going forward, that's been the case for years now, and as people should know that's going to continue to happen. To form those partnerships and to get out into the community. So, just a little background on a couple of things we're voting for. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Chow.
Yes.
Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Drinkwater.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Orders for the city manager. Order 60-day variance. Permission to waive the full reading, second reading by title. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowland, City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6, therefore entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, Temporary Traffic Regulations, are hereby implemented for a period of up to 60 days. Need a motion to adopt by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Drinkwater. Any questions? Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Chow.
Yes.
Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Drinkwater.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay, any
So, Mayor, can
Yeah.
we combine 9.1 to 9.3?
Sure. Yeah. Motion to combine bundle 9.1 through 9.3 by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Mercia. 9.1 wire inspection. National Grid requests installation of 24 feet of electrical conduit at 179 Bridge Street for service to Riverwalk Phase 2. 9.2 wire inspection. New singular wireless. DBA AT&T requests installation wireless small cell facility at 6 Industrial Ave. And 9.3 wire inspection. New singular wireless. DBA AT&T requests installation of wireless small cell facility at 282 Appleton Street. Need a motion to accept and adopt accompanying orders did we do that? No, because Council Rourke and seconded by Council Mercia. No roll call. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Petitions. We have one claim, one property damage. Need a motion to refer to Law Department for a report and recommendation.
So moved.
By Council Elliott, seconded by Councilor Chow. Miscellaneous 10-2, Coalition for a Better Acre requests permission to install 2 overhanging bay windows at 555 Merrimack Street. Need a motion to refer to Law Department. Report for recommendation by Councilor Conway, seconded by Councilor Drinkwater. 10-3, National Grid, Verizon New England requests installation of JO pole and relocate 6 JO poles along Andover Street. Motion to refer to public hearing on January 26, 2021 at 7 p.m. by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Chow. 10-4, Crown and Castle NG East LLC requests installation of 55 feet of 4-inch fiber conduit to existing customer at 650 Suffolk Street. Motion to refer to public hearing on January 26, 2021 at 7 p.m. by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Chow. City Council motions. First motion, Councilor Noon requests City Manager have Superintendent of LPD identify grants to offset the cost of video cameras for businesses, nonprofits, religious institutions, and the potential to connect to the Ring network or comparable video network for use by LPD, advancing public safety efforts in the neighborhood, seconded by Councilor Drinkwater. Councilor Noon?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. with this anticipate grant, we hope that it would help to deter crime and create a safer community, and also hope that it will assist law enforcement in investigation and prosecution. And the idea, that's the simplest idea right there.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. 11.2, Councilor Noon requests city manager investigate the feasibility of a voluntary pilot program for residents, business owners, and other religious and nonprofit institutions to register their address as a location that operates a video surveillance. Such a registry would allow Lowell police officers to readily identify known locations throughout the city of Lowell that have video surveillance systems that could potentially aid police with criminal investigations. In addition, report to identify other communities in Massachusetts where similar programs have been established. Seconded by Councilor Rourke. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the idea for this, again, similar to the first one, the intent is to help deter crime and assist law enforcement because, they cannot be everywhere. So this also helps to deter their businesses and institutions from being a target. And again, secure a safer environment for, for the businesses, for the institution, but also for the people that they serve. So having this is a good idea.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye. 11.3, Councilor Noon requests city manager have proper department review pedestrian safety along Branch Street business corridor, indicating if signage crosswalk will improve safety in the area. We have a registered speaker on this. Do you want them to go first, Councilor Noon?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mr.
All right. Tell Oak. Looks like he's on. Tell Oak.
If you're there, you can speak on the motion.
Yes, hi, I'm here.
There he goes.
Thank you. Just identify yourself and name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, and all the members of the City Council. My name is Tolayut Oak, and I am a business owner located at 32 Branch Street, the Lowell Flower House, and Upalo Well Bridal Boutique. I'm here to support Councilor Noon's request to have a proper department review on pedestrian safety along the Branch Street business corridor. I recently started my new business in the same building, the dessert shop and bakery, catering many Cambodian traditional foods and desserts to go. As a business owner, I'm concerned about my customers' safety, and I'm sure that all the business owners in the area also have the same concern. Customers shopping for food or grocery or other service in or around Branch Street area usually park their car on both sides of the street and walk around. Most of the time, they cross the street. While the traffic on Branch Street is heavy and fast, it is dangerous for everyone to cross the street. I believe that by having proper crosswalk and clear signage or the speed limit will increase safety for all people in the area, not just the shoppers, but also residents living around the area too. I also would like to take this opportunity to request the council to consider putting some trash bins in the area, since I don't see any around now. Trash is flying all over the place in the area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tola Yut was one of the business owners in the area. Other two expressed similar concern, and they tried to come to the council on this. Again, like Tola said, most of you know this area very, very well. It's a very narrow street with car parking on both sides, and and car coming and go not stopping and not concerning about the pedestrian. It's, we've seen almost a hit a couple of times. I was there in the areas just about every day. I think it's important that we address those issues, either be a crosswalk or a signage to warn people from, speeding and from also respecting the crosswalk. This certainly is going to improve the safety of the pedestrian in the area. That's one thing. And the other, I think it's not on the motion, but Talaj brought it up too, is that a while back, as the city was supposed to put a trash bin in the Cambodian town area. This is a Cambodian town area. So he's right. There's no trash bin in that area. We're supposed to have at least a couple in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the motion? Councilor Elliott?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was a while ago I had filed a motion regarding business corridors and the possibility of business organizations being set up similar to that of Couple Square, which were very successful, where there was a coalition of businesses specifically in that area to address and improve the area, and I think it made a marked difference. Planning and Development did go to, I think it was a CMAA, myself and Councilor Noon were there, and it was a productive meeting. We had quite a few individuals to attend, and some of it's just public safety issues, but also beautification issues. So I think this makes sense. It's an area that can undergo a redevelopment, but it needs some curb appeal and I think to take the next step with economic development. So if there's no objection to the make of the motion, I think this would be appropriate to have an economic development subcommittee up in that area and see if we can reinvigorate the idea of a small business organization that can promote their interests, like trash, like crosswalks, like things like that. So I'll make that in the form of a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Motion by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Noon.
And by the way, I'd like to hold that economic development subcommittee right in that business corridor. So we'll post that.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Next motion tonight, Councilor Noon requests city manager have city assessor place a video on the city's website relative to the process used to apply for abatements. Seconded by Councilor Rourke. Councilor Noon.
Mr. Mayor, the motion speak for itself.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Next motion tonight, Councilor Noon, Councilor Drinkwater, Councilor Chow. Request City Council pass a resolution reaffirming our belief in democracy and condemning the President's words and actions to undermine a legitimate election by the people, which serve to encourage and incite a violent attack on the United States Capitol.
There's a registered speaker here, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, there's a registered speaker on this, so why don't we let them go first?
D. Halzak? All right, she's there. D. Halzak.
Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. You have 5 minutes. Just state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Dee Halzak. I live at 318 Pawtucket Street in Lowell.
Joe, you can make your comments.
Okay. Somebody's talking, though.
There's a delay, John.
There's probably a delay. Just shut your TV or your whatever you're watching the meeting off, and then you can speak on the Zoom.
Yes. My name is Dee Halzak. I live at 318 Pawtucket Street in Lowell and have been a Lowell resident and voter for almost 25 years. I am here. Hello? Yes. Okay, my name is Dee Halzak. I live at 318 Pawtucket Street in Lowell and have been a Lowell resident and voter for almost 25 years. I am here tonight to speak in support of motion 11.
Sure, you just need to turn down your, whatever you're listening to the meeting on, and then just speak.
Okay. Okay, here. Hello?
Yeah, you're all set. Just speak. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm here tonight to speak in support of motion 11.5. I thank Councilors Noon, Drinkwater, and Chow for bringing this motion. I chose to speak because some may wonder why this motion is important and what Lowell could possibly have to do with what went on in Washington last week. As elected officials of our city, the safety and security of all Lowellians is your responsibility. At any given time, a portion of every population includes people who suffer from PTSD because of military or police or other first responder service, political turmoil in other countries, or simply traumatic events in their lives. Lowell is no exception to that. We count among our residents many who fled political instability, seeking this country as a refuge because of our reputation for political stability and strong support for democracy. And yet they've seen elected officials from other areas actively participating in the events of last week. We, and yes, I'm one of those affected by PTSD, can be triggered by such violent events. I still struggle to sleep. After other major national traumas, public officials have spoken to comfort and motivate their communities. It will do your shaken constituents good to hear their elected officials speak out on behalf of democracy and indeed normalcy in at least one corner of our world. I thank you for considering this motion.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Councilor Noon, then Councilor Drinkwater, and Councilor Chow.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Wednesday, violence at the U.S. Capitol brought flashback for me. I have never thought I would witness this here in America. You know, right after, while it's going on and after, I heard from a lot of residents, a lot of friends involved. And they said they were frightened, angry, and disbelieved by what happened. Last Wednesday, violence at the U.S. Capitol was the saddest, the darkest day in our country and nation. And I agree. I agree with people that we are better than that, and that we do not condone violence. So I want our resident, the resident of Lowell, to know that this council are appalled by what happened and condemn what happened and do not condone it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Drinkwater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, like so many other people, I watched the events of January 6th with just complete dismay. And over the past week, certain things have come to more light, such as the coordinated nature of the insurrection and the acts of intimidation and violence against police officers. My disgust has only continued to grow. And as I watched these events, though, I was dismayed, I was disgusted, but I wasn't surprised. And like many other people, I've been concerned over the past several months, as the President of the United States claimed, even as he was trailing in every poll, that the only way that he could lose the election was through fraud, mass voter fraud. After he lost the election, continued to peddle that conspiracy theory of massive fraud, and went on to pressure appointed and elected officials to change results. And most dangerously, continually telling his supporters throughout this process and in Washington, D.C. on January 6th that they had the election stolen from them and had to fight back. And throughout all of this, over the past several months, we have steered clear national politics here in this body and just continued to put our heads down and do the work of this city. And I believe that's been for the good. And I'm sure there are some who believe that we should continue doing that. But I do believe that now is an appropriate time and actually a necessary time for the Lowell City Council to make a statement on these matters, because I believe at a certain point, as we continue to convene and sit in front of these microphones, that if we don't acknowledge, I think, the very dangerous situation that our democracy is in right now, it starts to normalize what is going on right now. And what is going on is anything but normal and anything but acceptable. I had to make the point to tell my kids, my oldest kid is 8 years old, and they see what's going on TV, and I had to make the point to say, this isn't normal. This isn't anything that I've ever seen happen before, and it worries me that kids are growing up seeing these images on TV and thinking that this is normal for American democracy. And I do believe this impacts us. Even though our jurisdiction here at this body is municipal, our powers are derived directly from the U.S. Constitution, which guarantees each state a Republican form of government, and from the Massachusetts State Constitution, which establishes democratically elected municipal governments. And this is all interconnected, and anti-democratic behavior can spread. So the same forces that allow an event like January 6th to happen exist here in our community. Don't forget that we had QAnon with a lot of the same signs and shirts that we saw in D.C. demonstrating outside of City Hall here over the summer. This stuff exists here. They chose City Hall to make that statement, and I believe that we should use these seats and these microphones to make a statement pushing back on that kind of anti-democratic behavior here tonight. Democracy is not a given. Peaceful transfer of power is not a given. And these are things that I believe we need to stand up for when the time comes to stand up for democracy. So I hope we can do that here tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What happened did not happen in some small unknown country thousands of miles away. It happened here in America. It happened here in our capital. And all of us have chosen, the immigrants have chosen to come to the United States, and all the Americans chose to live in the United States because we believe in America. America is the beacon of democracy worldwide. What happened was not a Democratic or Republican matter. What happened was a mobster protest, just people scaling the walls of Capitol building, broke the windows, went inside the building, caused all kind of havoc and amok, and several people died. This is, it is an attack on democracy. It attacks on the symbol of America, the symbol of democracy, the Capitol building. And I look at it, that should not happen. It reminds many people that we watch international news or come from countries that went through violent situation like this. It's an insurrection, it's a coup d'etat, and it's incited by one person that does not believe in the democratic process. United States has come a long way, hundreds of years, experiment with democracy, and we believe in the election process. So I hope my fellow council can understand the situation, how impactful this is to our democratic process. As our families watch, our wives watch, our children watch, this is not democracy, what happened last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Rourke?
Yeah, sure. These type of motions have been in the city council with this type of council, 4 or 5, 6 times since we started. There's nobody that does not reaffirm democracy. What's going on tonight, it's political pandering at its finest. Attempt to take away democracy. The city council is not promoting what happened. There's no motion on here tonight about promoting what happened last week. And if you want to speak to your child about what happened, that should be a parent or a guardian or teacher's job. It's not a counselor's job. You know, and then if you want to talk about democracy, talk about what happened 3 hours later when democracy took place and they reaffirmed the Electoral College. You know, at best, when these motions are brought forward, and this isn't the first one, it's happened periodically over the years, but for some reason, you know, these past few months, they have been filed more often. It seems like we're dealing with one of these all the time. Nobody disagrees with the councilor's motion that's filed. It does not belong in a municipal body. You know, I don't see anybody at the State House filing something like this to talk about it. You know, we are here to do Lowell's business. This has no effect on the city of Lowell. And, you know, if there is a loved one or, you know, children or something, you know, you can tell them what happened. You know, tell them what democracy is. Tell them that it was taken care of that same night, and those that, you know, perpetrated the crime are being charged with it. You know, so I would like it if we could just do the city's business going forward. It'd be, you know, much less divisive and much less self-serving. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Nobody at home?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep. Councilor Noon?
If you could ask for a roll call on it, please.
Sure. We have a roll call. Oh, Councilor Conway, did you want to speak? No? Okay.
Excuse me.
Yep. Councilor Mercer?
I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, Councilor Mercer.
I do understand where Councilor Rourke is coming from. I don't think it belongs here. If you look at what's happening, they're going to impeach him anyway. So how is our resolution going to, when is it going to get there? In 4 weeks or whatever? The COVID, the mail is slow. I mean, I don't get it. I think it's people that are pandering to the Democratic Party. Do I condone what took place? I am very frustrated and upset, especially when we know that people died. 5 people died. I'm not saying I'm not for this motion, but I don't feel it belongs here. Last resolution we supported was a resolution that I made to try to keep the spinners here. And I asked through this motion that we send it to the people that are going to make that decision. Now let's stop and see what we have before us. We have Congresswoman Laurie Trahan. She supports impeachment. We have Ed Markey, he supports it. We have Elizabeth Warren, she supports it. What are we going to accomplish? They all support it. They're doing their job. I believe they're doing it. They're working to impeach him, and I don't know what us added into this is going to do. I mean, if you want me to support it, I'm going to vote present because I think enough is being done to do it. I think it's pandering is what I see this motion as, but that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Roll call.
Council Mercier.
Present.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Present.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Chow.
Yes.
Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Drinkwater.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes. Thank you. 11-6, Councilor Conway. Request city manager meet with the DPW commissioner to develop a plan to increase surveillance in the Shed Park pond area to address illegal dumping and to preserve the wildlife in its natural environment. Seconded by?
Second.
Councilor Noon. Councilor Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very quickly, I did get a few calls on this, and I myself went down there a number of times. I see that the people tend to dump all over that area, down around the pond area, and it's what we call pollywog pond. When I was growing up in that area, that's what we always called it. Anyway, people that walk around that area, they were very upset because they see the destroying of animals and the removing of aquatic wildlife from the pond itself. And as I said, I've witnessed garbage, mattresses, appliances, and so forth dumped in that area. And I think it's incumbent on us to, protect those areas so that throughout. And by the way, not just at Shed Park area, but throughout the entire city, so that our citizens can enjoy, the outdoors and enjoy nature. We can't allow just a few individuals to damage or disrespect our environment. So what I'm asking for is that the city manager, meet with the DPW commissioner, and if we can talk about getting some signage there about not dumping and any type of penalties that might be available for the destruction of wildlife. Anyways, I think that it would certainly be a situation that I think it could certainly help a lot of people in that area so they can enjoy that wildlife. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. 11.7, Councilor Chow requests city manager investigate and implement immediate remedial traffic solutions at the Lord Overpass. Seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few residents called me up on this matter. I know what's going on there is temporary, but we have to remember that that area is a high traffic area, and we've had a drastic change to it. And I drive by that when I have to. I try to avoid it when I can, just like many residents who spoke with me. I think even as a temporary sign and so forth, I believe that the signage, the arrows on the road, they look faded or you can't really see all too well. And it's confusing to drivers if those signs are meant to be there or was supposed to be faded out. But just because it was not clear. And the coming from Chelmsford Street going into the Rotary or that intersection now, the sign that's too low. That's the left lane going left, middle lane going straight, right lane turning right, what have you. It's too low for people to see. And I think most people have problems at night, especially. I think that place need. I don't know if this is possible, Madam Manager, if could be a temporary lighting post in that area to brighten up at nighttime for better visibility. So I think it's just a simple fix if possible. Just clearer markings on the street and lighting in that area. I think it would help a lot, even though it's temporary, but we don't know how many months it's going to be temporary. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councilor Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is a good motion, a legitimate motion that has been a problem for a little bit. I think that the changes that the manager has made over the past couple of weeks has vastly improved the traffic over there. I think Councilor Chow's suggestions are excellent. I also think that, Madam Manager, the left that you provide, that the DPW provided, coming off of Middlesex Street has made a huge difference. Fully supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, Madam?
Yeah, just quickly, we'll certainly look and I'll bring these recommendations to the team. When the traffic pattern changed right around the same time as the big snowstorm, the only one we've had so far, knock on wood, it was a nightmare. And people went out there on Saturday, the police, the chief, the fire chief, Craig Thomas, everybody, Christine Clancy, and made recommendations and made changes that did help. But we'll continue to monitor this because it's temporary, but it's a year. you know, so we'll make sure that if there's things that can be done, we'll do them.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Next motion, 11.8, Councilor Chow requests city manager investigate trash problem in the vicinity of a River Meadow Brook and research potential private sector support from nearby companies in resolving the issue. Seconded by Councilor New. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a similar motion back in June, but it was more brought to the general area of that River Meadowbrook, Leverett Street, and Washington Street. At that time, I was more focused on the illegal dumping in that neighborhood, but also since the River Meadowbrook was nearby, we walked along the brook also, and we saw the homeless camp there. The city, the DPW did respond, thank you, Madam Manager, right away. They went to clean up the neighborhood, pick up, a lot of trash. But over, I think in the fall time, the trash accumulated again, and we had a volunteer group led by Brad Budenhoy, I hope I say his name correctly, and a few elected officials went to help volunteer pick up the trash. And again, we try to pick up some trash along the Meadowbrook as well. And what I noticed back then, and again in the video is brought forth the event on Facebook by Rocky Morrison, it seems to me that the trash and the dumpings, the tents, sort of probably tripled since the time that I looked at it back in the summer regarding to my motion. And at that time, one of the solutions from the motion response was that that area is controlled by Mass DOT. And I know, Madam Manager, you and the administration tried to contact Mass DOT a couple times to have them come clean up that area. And because of COVID-19, that's been delayed. And I believe it's going to continue to be delayed. But at the same time, the trash are accumulating. I'm concerned also not just about the homeless camp, the trash that collected there. I think eventually it will get clean. But I'm afraid of the climate impact because a lot of this trash will eventually fall with the strong wind, rain, or what have you. The mattresses, the tents, the trash, they're going to fall into the river sooner or later. It's going to contaminate the river water in our city. That's going to cause more harm. I don't know if Mass DOT can come in anytime soon, but one of the suggestions from Rocky Morrison and other people that comment on social media is that it's for the city to maybe develop some kind of partnership with nearby companies, see if they would contribute some funding because it's a big project, it's a big cleanup. And you mentioned it before, Madam Manager, this is not just a trash thing, it's not just a homeless thing because it's huge. I don't think like the city can solve it. If you clean up the trash one time, it's going to come back again. If you move the homeless camp to a different place, they're going to just move to a different location. I understand it's a very complex problem, but if you don't do anything, things get worse. So I'm hoping that something can be done, develop private partnership, at the same time as working with Mass DOT to have them come as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
Yeah, just quickly, Councilor, we did have a meeting with Rocky Morrison this week. I did just sign an agreement with him. He's done work for the city before. This is more of a partnership. DPW is going to provide him with some dumpsters in areas, and he's going to do cleaning. He's had some state funding to do that on state land. So we're working together with them, and I think your point as far as if there are any public-private partnership opportunities, we'll explore that. Some of these camp areas have been pretty much abandoned, other than one or two people who don't want to leave, but many of these individuals in some of the areas we were talking about are now in the hotels. But left behind is a huge challenge. So, but we are working with them, and I know there's an effort to get a lot of things done before another snowfall. So,
thank you. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also received a call from Rocky Morris, and he needed a dumpster as well. But he didn't want to tread on private property, and he thought it was the city's, but it was the state. So I called Doreen Burgess to see from Tom Golden what we could do. So that's, if you could help,
and
that'd be
we've talked
great.
to MassDOT, and MassDOT, so they have indicated they'll come and do some work. Part of the problem with MassDOT, they've been reluctant to displace homeless during the pandemic unless it's become a critical issue. So we are working with MassDOT on their properties as well.
Because the place that he is referring to, the bedding and whatever, all that, there's nobody there, but
Right.
it's, yeah.
Right, and a lot of them just left it behind.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Madam Manager, just one other thing too. The camp over by the dog park on First Street looks like it's empty. Can we just check that one out? Thank you. 11.9, Councilor Chow requests city manager provide an update regarding parking enforcement procedures on city streets during declared snow emergencies. We do have a registered speaker. You want the registered speaker to go first, Councilor Chow?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Robert Hunt, he's connecting now. Still connecting. You should be Robert Hunt.
I'm here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, Madam Manager, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Robert Hunt. I live at 48 Florence Avenue, and I'm speaking tonight about something as simple as common courtesy as it relates to parking in the city of Lowell. Unfortunately, there is currently a lack of it, and my opinion is that it needs to be addressed and any existing ordinance enforced. I have a couple of issues, 2 issues only, and I'll be quick. The first one is in a TSF, or traditional single-family neighborhood, in an owner-occupied traditional 2-family home. What off-street parking requirements is the owner expected to provide in general and in snow emergency for tenants? The reason I ask this question is currently on Florence Avenue, we have a fairly new landlord who has off-street parking for 5, maybe 6 cars, but refuses to allow his tenants to park in the driveway and forces them into off-street parking on a regular basis, and specifically in snow emergency during the parking ban. The second one I have is in many times recently, I've had automobiles parked or dumped in front of my property for days. I understand that there are weekend visitors at various properties in my neighborhood, and we usually work out an arrangement. But most recently, cars have been left for 4 days or more. I've called the LPD to see what can be done, and my most recent issue was after the last snow emergency, where I had cleaned out an area and a car was left for 5 days. I called the LPD and they came to run a license plate to find that it was registered. I was told that it was too bad that this happened, but under the current guidelines, there is nothing that can be done. A car can stay parked for months in a spot as long as it is registered and has legitimate plates. I have an application for reserved dwelling parking size currently in hand and intend to go forth with it, but it doesn't go far enough for a traditional 2-family home in a TSF neighborhood reserving just a single parking spot. And I want to give this example in my circumstance. On the first floor of my property lives my 96-year-old mother-in-law, who is legally blind and deaf. She has elder service people come in on a regular basis, and with the example of the car abandonment just given, care workers sometimes have no choice, no close proximity, to park in order to provide regular care. And in closing, what I'd really like an answer on question 1, What does the landlord for a traditional two-family property in a TSF district provide? If available, I would think that they should at least provide 1 to 2 spots during a snow emergency. And in question 2, at the very least, have a reserved, disabled, elderly dwelling parking sign available. The handicap sign does not work for her. She's blind, she can't drive. It's just, it's frustrating. And that's what I have going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Robert Hunt, for speaking on this very important issue. As everybody knows from the city administration, DPW, the residents of Lowell, the last snowstorm caused a lot of havoc and a lot of confusion. And it came about with this motion, even though I put in a snowstorm situation. But this really is a residential parking issue in general. As Mr. Hunt mentioned, I'm sure there's ordinance in place, but we would like to have the resident updated for the residents. For example, like Mr. Hunt mentioned, if it's a two-family, does the landlord have an obligation to provide off-street parking for the tenants? So when it comes to a snowstorm, they don't, go park, either they park in front of the house and it doesn't get plowed, or they go park in front of somebody's house that the owner shoveled the space for themselves. But there's nothing the police can do because it's quote unquote legal. So we want to make sure that, if there are parking ordinance and something like this in place, we want to be able to enforce it citywide, because from what I understand, in some neighborhoods, there were a lot of towings, and in some neighborhoods, there were no towings. And I understand it's very difficult for the police officer to make a decision. They might make it on the spot to see which is appropriate, which not. But I think that's confusion for the residents, and very, very frustrating. And the second point Mr. Hunt mentioned was about I understand that right now there's only one reserve. You can apply for one reserve plaque for one property, whether it's for resident dwelling only or for handicap. But in a property, 2-family, 2 to 4 family, if space is available, it would be possible to upgrade the ordinance to allowing 2 plaques for that type of household. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Elliott.
So, Madam Manager, I think the speaker raises a good point when it comes to unlimited parking of vehicles in the street. And I know we can't put no parking signs throughout the city, but it seems reasonable that at what point do vehicles become abandoned? I mean, I concur, you see these vehicles that are parked 2-3 days, they have a foot of snow on them. Seems that there should be some limit on the amount of time that somebody can occupy a space in the street. And I'll give it, for instance, there's been a van, a white van, a tile truck van on Pawtucket Boulevard for 3 or 4 days, which I think is a huge hazard, and I did call. But can we look into an ordinance where, of course, it's public property, you can park in the street, but you can't just leave a vehicle there for 2 or 3 months or an extended period of time. I just don't think that's the intended purpose of on-street parking. So,
Madam Manager?
Yeah, we'll look into it. We can have some research done. I mean, there are some state laws around this too, so we'll see, what we can control by ordinance or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye. 11:10, Councilor Chow requests City Manager report to Council regarding a 1-, 3-, and 5-year plan to make the city workforce reflect the diverse demographics of the city population. Year 1 plan is to be incorporated into FY 22-23 budget plan. Seconded by Councilor Drinkwater. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Councilor Rodney Elliott for bringing that motion on the HR audit earlier, and Madam Manager's response to the motion tonight. It was very, very timely. And the timing of HR audit will give us recommendation for implementing changes. It's not reasonable to think all the recommendations can be implemented all at once due to the expense, union negotiations, other workforce considerations. However, we need at least get some initial progress and some alignment for going forward with a plan that can get us where we should be in several years. With this motion, I am requesting the city manager to take the results and recommendations of the HR audit and beginning with this coming fiscal year, come back to the council with a multi-year plan to get us where we should be. I would also recommend that each year at budget time, the city manager update the council on the progress made and any updates that are needed to the plan going forward. Because to be honest and successful, we need to go from discussion to action and to realize that we can be flexible and thoughtful about making our city workforce be more reflective of our citizens. And most importantly, we make Lowell a more welcoming and inclusive city for all our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Mr. Mayor,
Mercia?
can we take the next two motions if there's no objection from the makers of the motion that seem to be the same?
Sure.
Second.
Sure. Motion to bundle by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Chow and myself request city manager provide to the council an update regarding the status of the COVID-19 vaccine distribution and testing sites throughout the city. We do have a registered speaker, so we'll let the registered speaker go and then wrap up.
Shirley Ashenball. Shirley Ashenball? You have to unmute.
If you can hear us, you need to unmute.
Here we go.
There we go.
There.
I apologize for my voice. This is what it sounds like when you've spent 33 days on a ventilator. In May of 2020, my husband Ronald, my daughter Rhiannon, and I were among the first people anyone in our lives knew who contracted COVID-19. We had very little difficulty, if any, getting access to lab tests. There was such little difficulty that my daughter was able to get tested 4 times over the course of 5 weeks, all done at Lowell General Hospital's drive-up site. It seems to be a much different case today. I have seen countless friends, family, and members of local community social media pages in Lowell unable to access quick and reliable testing when needed as of late. Nearly all appointment-only sites are booked almost immediately. Drive-up testing continues to disappear almost as fast as it appears, and many have to travel upwards of 30 to 40 miles to find a test. Now, imagine those circumstances, but add in much of Lowell's low-income, homeless, elderly, and other vulnerable populations who are unable to transport themselves to Methuen or Lawrence or Framingham for those tests. Massachusetts is seeing its highest number of active cases since the pandemic began. Lowell is one of the state's largest cities. Increasing testing could greatly help curb the spread of COVID in this area. My husband, Ronald, a lifelong resident of Lowell, passed away from COVID in June. I myself have been disabled by COVID. After 8 months, I still cannot stand or walk. There needs to be an increase in testing until vaccinations are readily available for the general public. And per state guidelines, that will not be happening for at least the next 4 to 5 months, as vaccinations are reportedly going slower than planned. I would never wish what happened to I and my family, what I and my family have lived through with this virus upon anyone. And I hope that having citizens like myself come forward to speak helps get the discussion moving as to how serious COVID-19 still remains. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shirley. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mrs. Archambault, for having the courage to speak tonight. I just want to say to you and your family, the first time I read about your story in the newspaper in the summer, it was really the first time that how close to home it really is can affect any of us. And my heart and my condolences go to you and your family. I combined the two concepts of the motions together. One is to discuss the distribution of the vaccination and the plan for it, but it really ties to also free testing sites as well. Today, if vaccination comes in phases, as you mentioned, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and it's going to be a while before it gets to the general public. And, on the one hand, I would like to, on the rest, I would like to find out how that's going to be distributed to the public. If we depend on pharmacies like CVS or Walgreens to do it, I think it would just take too long. Today, Governor Baker announced that he's partnering with Gillette Stadium, where they can do literally thousands of vaccination at a time to move fast for the public. And so that would require us to work with some kind of partnership here with a UMass Lowell or some big facility where we can do the vaccination, a lot of vaccination at the same time when it comes. Before then, in relation to the COVID testing for now, we're talking about in May before the vaccination reached the general public. We are so close. We are at the end of the tunnel, but 3, 4, 5 months, and in the period where we have a surge, that could be literally a lifetime for somebody that cannot get the proper testing because it might be too far, they don't have insurance, what have you. So I know that you, Madam Manager, did a fantastic job last month. I don't know if that could be explored somewhat again, even if a smaller scale to the absolute needy, to the absolute vulnerable, provide free testing until the distribution of vaccination comes in play in April or May. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, motion speaks for itself, everything that Councilor Chow said, and the great work that we were able to do and through your office last month, if there's any way to get more testing. And I know it's a state plan for the distribution, but just to make sure that it's clear to us, if we could just get a follow-up report. Madam Manager?
Yeah, we will get you that report. As I said, it does seem to be a work in progress. They are tweaking it, but there are at least the first 3 phases, and there's a part 1 and part 2 of each one. We can certainly get that with any changes that are made to that. As far as testing, that continues to be an issue. Obviously, last month we were able to test, as I said, almost 10,000 Llewellyans because of, but that's something we paid for from CARES money. And we simply don't have more CARES money. We are really looking to the state to bring back testing in this area. I couldn't agree more that we need that here, and we should have, the free testing and stop the spread testing sites. I do know that the state also was at their limit at the end of the year because of resources. I do know the new stimulus package coming from the federal government provides the Commonwealth with money for testing as well as for vaccination rollout. So hopefully we will see new testing sites, and we'll continue to work. I know we've alerted the delegation about this and asked them to please weigh in with the state. That's the most, being as frank as possible, but that's the most realistic chance we have, opening new testing sites with more money that's come from the federal government and just advocating for this area. It's not just, the city of Lowell, though that's a major piece, but you look all around Greater Lowell. These are all red communities and there's no free testing site in this area. So we're going to continue to advocate and ask for that, but we'll get a report on the testing as we move forward, as well as the vaccine schedule and plan. But I couldn't agree more. The testing is going to continue to be critical for many months to come. So,
thank you. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to commend the speaker for staying up this late and for taking the time to show the importance of this very important issue. Haven't experienced what she went through, and I want to send my sincere condolences to her family on the loss of her husband, Ron, who was a very famous tow truck driver in the city of Lowell. That was a very beautiful article in the paper. You see people and then you hear of their tragedy. My heart is broken for the family, but I want to commend her for coming forward. We'll do everything that we can to make this happen, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Well put. Any announcements tonight? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Chow. Thank you.